call the Honourable Mary-Ann Street.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. On this side of the House, we cannot have any confidence in a government which favours the few. We cannot have any confidence in a government which is out of touch, and we cannot have any confidence in a government which is so arrogant that it doesn't listen to the people. Mr Speaker, this morning the Salvation Army released their State of the Nation report, and there was a lot more reality in that State of the Nation report than we had in the Prime Minister's State of the Nation speech. There was a lot more reality about what is happening in New Zealanders' lives in that report than the Prime Minister has any knowledge of at all. In that report, the Prime Minister was given a D for efforts on child poverty, a D also for housing affordability, but I'll come back to that one shortly. The D for child poverty, Mr Speaker, is an indictment on this government's policies and where they have been going for the last 5 years. When the government only looks after the few at the top and still continues to believe in that old, discredited, outdated, irrelevant trickle-down theory that never worked in the first place, then its only possible mark is a D, is a failure. For those who do not remember what a D stood for, it was an epic fail in anybody's terms. And so that is what the Salvation Army rated this government for in its efforts on child poverty. And so that, Mr Speaker, is what the people of New Zealand are looking at right now. The Salvation Army sent a very clear message to all political parties. It said that bold policies are needed to address child poverty, to address things that come out of that are related to it, such as domestic violence and violent crime, and also to address housing. Bold policies are required, and we see none of that coming out of the government. If the economy is improving, as the government would have us believe, how is it that there are so many people, so many families locked out of any benefits or potential benefits of that improvement? How is it that there are so many people who are feeling that they are locked out of a fair and a just society? Mr Speaker, I'd like to pick up some of the Salvation Army's work as it relates to Nelson, where I live and work. Mr Speaker, the Major Jill Knight, who is the head of the Salvation Army in Nelson, and was the one who fronted the Salvation Army's State of the Nation report in Nelson, said that more was needed to be done to combat problems such as child poverty. She said that stresses from low wages and seasonal work can lead to domestic violence and child poverty, and others agreed with her. This was the front page story on the Nelson Mail today. This was the front page story. The government is so out of touch that its member for Nelson has no idea of the level of poverty, the level of deprivation that exists in Nelson. Everybody thinks that Nelson is a wonderful place to live, and so it is. And so it is. But it's a hard place to survive. It is a hard place to survive because it has that double whammy of low seasonal wages and extremely high house prices because of its desirability, because of its physical environment. And yet it is incredibly difficult for young families to get by in Nelson. And the common claim about Nelson is that it lives on sunshine wages. There are two definitions of sunshine wages, Mr Speaker, and one is that low wages plus sunshine are meant to be the thing that helps you get by. So it doesn't matter that you've got that people earn low wages, they have the sunshine to compensate. That's one interpretation. The realistic interpretation, however, is that because of the seasonal work, in many instances, people can only work when the sun shines, and they don't get paid for the days when it rains, and they can't get out, and they can't harvest the crops, and they can't contribute to the primary production for which the Nelson region is famous. And so seasonal work and sunshine wages means that workers only get to make money when the sun shines. If it rains, the workers do not get paid. Mr. Speaker, I just want to quote from Jill Knight, who was as I say, the Salvation Army Community Ministries Nelson Tasman Bay manager. And she said that the Salvation Army report was reflective of problems in Nelson. And she said that she saw people at crisis point, and she put a lot of this down to low wages and a reliance on seasonal work. What she said was this, as quoted in the Nelson Mail, and I quote it here again: families that have regular income may be sort of okay. It might be sunshine wages, but it's regular. But for seasonal work, if it's a wet day, people don't get paid, and because it's seasonal work, they only earn on the day they work. It's not an easy situation, unquote. She said that most of the families they see are trying to do the right thing, but they're spending more than half of their income on rent, and then there is the power bill. And the Prime Minister has the nerve to get up in this House today and say the Salvation Army ought to get out more. I have never heard a more arrogant, a more dismissive statement applied to the body of people who is famous, that body of people who are famous for working for the underprivileged, who are the ones who get out and do the hard yards with the people who need assistance. Unlike this government's idea of assistance is money for Rio Tinto, is money for Sky City, is money for Chorus. That's this government's idea of assistance. To get out and help the people in need, we'll give $30 million to Rio Tinto. We will sell problem gambling and the downstream social consequences of that to Sky City, and we will make sure that the ailing Chorus will roll out broadband at a price that families can't afford, but we will make sure that the company doesn't fall over. What happened to competition? What happened to the survival of the fittest that the National Party is so famous for representing? Mr. Speaker, this government is doing harm. Its purpose is not to do harm. Its purpose is to assist the growth and the development of this country. But it is not doing that. It is locking out the majority of people, including families in Nelson, who are doing it hard, from the results of any improvement in the economy, locking them out from any hope for their families, and locking them out of any security for going forward. Mr. Speaker, when the food parcels that are given out in the Nelson area are now twice as high, or nearly twice as high, two-thirds as high as they were before. And in fact, in the last in a 10-day period in January, certainly there were some 70 food parcels given out to just over 200 people. There is something wrong in the state of New Zealand, and this government is leading the rottenness in the state of New Zealand. They've run out of ideas, they've run out of energy, and now they need to be run out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Chris Ockenvold.
Mr. Speaker.